Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Kenworth Northeast Training Academy. Today, we'll learn more about Eaton's automated transmissions. My name is Melinda. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Kenworth Northeast, and more importantly, we're joined by Adam Meyer from Eaton. He's going to take us through today's training. So cameras and audio are defaulted to off to reduce background noise and distractions during our sessions. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A at any time, and we will address them throughout the call. Also, just so you know, in addition to today's training, we've got an exciting lineup of events throughout the year this year. So if you've not had the opportunity to check out our other sessions, you can find them online at www.kenworthne.com/events. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and turn it on over to Adam.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Right here. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the Endurant XD. It's part of our new Endurant line. We also have the Endurant HD. That is our 12-speed line haul. The Endurant XD is going to be kind of the focus for today. This is going to be our vocational transmission. This is 18-speed, fully automated. Anyone who came from an Ultra Shift, we're going to have some comparison in there also about the Ultra Shift. We're going to have some, talk and discussion about, manual customers who are considering going to automated. So with that, we'll get started. So this slide here gets into the difference between the Endurant XD and the Endurant XD Pro. We do have two different models here, transmissions being, same as same. The only difference we're going to have is with the Pro is going to be our on and off highway, high performance and vocational. The XD regular is just on highway high performance. We'll get into the differences between the two of them here later in the slides. As I mentioned from the beginning, this transmission is built from a ground up as being a fully automated transmission. Our Ultra Shift transmission we had in the past was a manual transmission that we automated, right? So this is why this one is built from the bottom line, or built for the bottom line, designed for every driver. We'll get into the details of why it makes it such a great transmission for everybody at this point. So this gets into some of the specifics as well. This starts to talk about there's 1 to 6 reverse speeds, 225 pounds lighter than the Ultra Shift Plus, and best in class for PTO functionality, which I'll take a quick dive into here later in the slides. So built for the bottom line, 2% more fuel economy for the Ultra Shift Plus MXP. That's our 18-speed Ultra Shift one. Coolerless design up to 110,000 pounds. Smart features, it's got transmission fluid pressure sensors and oil temperature sensors. And with the Ultra Shift, we didn't have that. So the Ultra Shift required the gears to go through a bath of lubrication. That bath of lubrication would then spray the lube where it needs to be. If you were to lose, a certain amount, those gears could still go through the lube, but it would just cavitate it and it wouldn't sling it to where it needs to be. And it could lead to a low lube burnup. With this, you have a bottom sump pump that's driven off the counter shaft. And that then takes the lube and sprays it to exactly where it needs to be. And in that process, we can then look at the oil temperature sensors and we can get a readout. We can also look at the pressure sensors and get a readout. So if we have any kind of indication of heat, which should be from fluid loss, we're going to see it. If we start to have fluid pressure issues, we're going to be able to see that as well too. And it should lead to a lot less low lube burnouts. We also got one of the lowest maintenance requirements. It's the longest lube change interval. It's up to 500,000 miles. And we'll compare that to some of the other transmissions here later in the slides. So designed for every driver, impressive low-speed maneuverability, and optimized software that makes smart decisions to instill confidence in difficult conditions. What this really goes to talk about is a lot of issues we've seen with the Ultra Shift in the past, right? Ultra Shift was a great product, very robust. Longevity was there, right? It did a great job. It's just, it didn't fit all applications. We had many different shift calibrations that could be applied to it. And sometimes it'd have to be tweaked, and sometimes it just wouldn't fit every application. One of the biggest issues that I think people had was the low speed maneuverability with that, right? So you're trying to go slow, maybe you're trying to back up doubles, back up a light grade, and we could simulate, the slipping of the clutch. We would have to do that through something called blended pedal. At certain points, that clutch would just grip and take off. You almost feel like the truck was kind of just jerking, right? And that's due to the clutch material that we had. We were using a ceramic clutch for that, which is great for dissipating heat, great for longevity, just a good clutch, right? The issue is ceramic grips. It doesn't slip. We also had electronically controlled actuation for the clutch, which didn't give us the finite movement that we'd want. And we also had a different actuation style, push versus pull, right? So with our new clutch, we use an organic material on the Endurant products, and we use pneumatically shifted. That allows us to have a lot more finite movement and have more control over it during that time. That allows us to go at a half-inch increment at a time of speed. So you can go as slow as you want, as fast as you want, up a hill, down a hill, and you're not going to have that jerking. You're going to actually have the slipping of the clutch and that finite movement that we've all been looking for. So that makes it versatile enough to give professionals the tailored configurations they need to get the job done. We have new performance goals, as I mentioned, with the Ultra Shift. Plus, we had many different calibrations you could pick from for the shifting points. With this, we've only got 3 for the regular XD and then 4 for the XD Pro. And I'll get into some of those here in a little bit. And there's some cool features as to why we're able to do that at this point. We do have up to 6 reverses, and the 6 are only available on the XD Pro, and comprehensive gear logic, which goes into a lot of the AI type technology that we use for the shifting decisions. So key features. This slide does a really great job of kind of explaining when you'd be using our HD 12-speed product, when you'd want to be looking at the XD product, and when you'd want to be looking at the XD Pro. So starting off in the left corner here, you're going to see how we go up the line here. Lower horsepower GCW, best fuel economy. That's going to put you in the HD. When you're looking more for performance, but you don't quite need all the GCW, you still might be crossing into the XD territory. We're going to get a little bit more performance. You're going to have higher RPM shift points. It's going to carry a little bit lower. You're going to have more options there for performance. And then you're going to get the better acceleration, hill climbing, and high horsepower torque. So that's going to allow you to have the 18 speeds. It's going to give you more gear duration, right? And then if you see at the bottom line of that same chart, we're going to start getting into different vocations. So you're going to start off with line haul, basic, on-highway performance, pickup and delivery, and basic dump, okay? Basic dump is where this gets a little gray. You'll see how we kind of overlap. Anything that's spec'd as a dump truck is going to default to us wanting to see an XD Pro on there. And that's due to the fact that a dump truck, whether you're going to have it on pavement during its first life, it's going to have a second life. And we assume with someone saying, hey, this is a dump truck, they might want to take it off road at some point. The reason we'd want to put it in a Pro for that reason is that anything that is loose gravel, mud, anything that's going to be outside of, hard maintained dirt packed roads or, stone roads that are hard packed, is going to cause it to want to shift more, right? We're going to have more shift actuations. And we also might be in a situation where we're going to require the off-road mode, which is one of the shift performance goals that we have. So with that being said, we'd want to see it in the XD Pro, which has a high thermal clutch. Anything mining, oil field, logging, paving, mixers is all going to be into the XD Pro. You can see off to the side here, this gets into the XD and the XD Pro differences. You get 3 reverse speeds with the regular XD, and the XD Pro you get 6. You get the extreme duty clutch with the XD Pro. You get the off-highway performance goal, and it's required for the logging, mining, oil field, fire rescue, and off-highway applications as I had already designated. You also see the GCW. It's unlimited with the XD Pro. And you'll see with the XD regular, it's limited to 166. You also have a 2050 foot-pound torque rating option with the XD Pro. One caveat here for the GCWs, and I'll get into this again, is the TX18, which is also an Endurant XD. Okay, it's labeled through PACCAR. That does not have the unlimited GCW, and that's limited just due to the engine torque rating and the engine power rating. That is separate. I don't have a slide for that, but that can be found on the PACCAR's website for the TX18 to get the clarification on what their GCWs are. So this slide does a great job of kind of showing off the new transmission's about. We'll start off at the top here. So internal oil temperature sensor. You'll see how that points down. All of that is maintained in what you'll see to the left, which is the Megatronic transmission module. Everything hooks into that. Everything reads to that. You'll see that you don't see any electrical components except for one wire going to the end of the transmission. You'll see it near the output shaft. That one wire is for the output shaft speed sensor. We just had no other way of running that. All the other wire is right to the top, and you have no more exterior wires that ran to it. Everything's controlled through the MTM, and everything it then ties into the TCM, which you'll see on the top. And that's that black box on top of the silver MTM. So the transmission fluid pressure sensor, you have that next. You got an LCA. We've got the internal wirings we'd mentioned, the high capacity 4-bolt rear PTO. You have the optional transmission cooler provisions. You've got the twin countershaft design that we've always had, standard 8-bolt PTO opening, and integrated clutch housing. So with our HD product, it's a 3-piece design where the bell housing is separate from the main box and the auxiliary section in the rear. So this, for strength and durability, we made the main box and clutch housing one. And it's a high pressure die cast aluminum case that's 225 pounds lighter than our legacy product. This is the version of the Pro. And as you'll see at the top left here, that adds a rock-free mode. Now, rock-free mode is another reason why you need the high thermal clutch. And what that does for rock-free, say you're stuck in the snow, mud, any situation like that, can't get out. If you're in a manual transmission, you would take the clutch, you would release it fast as you press down on the throttle, right? That's going to rock you forward. And then you would immediately push the clutch down, you would break torque, come off the throttle, and you'd rock backwards. And you would keep doing that to rock yourself out. But with this rock-free mode, you would then press the rock-free button, and put it in that mode, and you're going to use the clutch pedal as an the throttle pedal as an inverted clutch. So you would take the throttle pedal, you'd press it down, and that's going to release the clutch fast. You're going to spring forward. As soon as it senses you coming off the throttle, it's going to allow the truck to rock backwards, and then you're going to just repeat that process. So you're basically rocking it with the throttle pedal as an inverted clutch pedal. You'll then get far enough ahead that you hopefully can back up in your tire prints, and then you can, scurry right out of there. If not, you'll just keep rocking until you get out. We've got plenty of videos of this online. It's worth checking out. There's some on YouTube also. You can type in Endurant XD rock free. There's a whole plethora of videos out there. It's very interesting to watch. One thing to keep in mind is when that happens, you'll smell burnt clutch. You'll think you destroyed the clutch. And the great thing about this is with the high thermal clutches, you have not come anywhere near its thermal limits. Now, it is possible that you could get CA on the dash, which starts for clutch abuse. It's very rare, but if you do hit the thermal limits or come near it, it will stop you and it'll make you wait until it cools down. So this, with the XD Pro, you're given the off-highway high-performance goal. And again, that's optimized calibration for operating on natural rolling terrain and soft soil. So if you could picture a muddy hill you're about to go up, it's going to try to inhibit an upshift as much as it can. So you're not shifting as you're going up a grade where it assumes you're going to be on either loose gravel, mud, or anything of that sort. It's got internal oil temperature sensors we had talked about being key with the transmission fluid pressure sensor. It's got up to 6 reverses and the extreme duty clutch. The extreme duty clutch is different than the high thermal clutch. The extreme duty clutch is actually the 2050 foot-pound clutch. That does get a separate clutch, and I have another slide that'll show the difference with those as well. So this gets into the performance goals. So as I mentioned, the Endurant XD regular has standard, performance, and tanker for unbaffled tanks. The XD Pro gets the off-highway. So even with a standard shift calibration on this, you still have a performance-driven calibration with a slight side to fuel economy. Performance is going to be your pure performance. That's going to be for people who really want to just get up and moving. And then tanker, again, for unbaffled tanker, who we described off-highway. So this is the extreme duty clutch for the 2050 foot-pound torque that we had talked about. So nothing too different with it. The weight's going to be a little bit different. DDA is going to be a little bit thicker, a little bit more robust. So this gets into the difference here that I've mentioned. So this is going to be your EXD is going to be your regular XD transmission. That gets the standard clutch. And then you got the EXDP, which is your Pro version. That gets a different clutch. And then your Pro 2050 gets the extreme duty clutch, which we had just seen. So deep dive, new high capacity PTO. This is going to show the difference between the HD and the XD as far as torque. This is 111% of engine speed. Get up to 160 horsepower at 1400 RPM and 610 pound-foot of torque. One thing to note is that on the Endurant XD and the XD Pro, we did swap sides for where the PTO hooks up. It's not as much of an issue anymore since we don't have 3-piece exhausts anymore. There's not too much that gets in the way, but anyone who has different bracketry, different thoughts, or if they're running, multiple pumps and plumbing and stuff, they might just want to be aware of that if they've ran ultra shifts in the past. So here we get into a little bit more details as well, getting into the PXD and PXDP. That's going to be the PACCAR numbers for the TX18. And then these are just some of the PTO availability that we have right now. So Chelsea, Bezeris, which is partnered with Eaton, and Muncie. If you guys have any kind of shortages on PTOs and looking for availability, Kenworth Northeast can help you guys get your hands on some of the Bezeris PTOs. So feel free to reach out to them. Here we're going to have a slide that shows the 3 bottom rear case bosses that you can tap into. You'll also see to the right a bracket, right? Eaton doesn't supply any of the brackets, nor do we supply any kind of information regarding, the weights that can be hooked up to that. That's just due to the fact that there's so many different size PTOs and pumps that depending on the size of the pump, how far it's hanging off there, and what kind of bracing is used, it's all going to give you different support. So that is up to the pump manufacturers and the PTO manufacturers to do the recommendations of what they want for bracketry and how much weight can be held on, so on and so forth. This just goes to show different points of where it can be hooked up to. So this is the Endurant HD Bezeris PTO. I'm not a PTO guy, so I'll just kind of get a quick overview for you guys. But the main thing that I've seen from this and heard from this is the gasket that we use, right? Nice, robust, thick gasket. I know people have leaks there. Bezeris does a great job overall with their PTOs. They really overbuild everything. Even the material that they use for their O-rings is like way above anything they would ever have to use. And I'm sure it probably costs them 3 cents more. And in the grand scheme of building parts like that, that's big money anytime they have to spend more money. But they purposely overbuilt it for a reason, and it shows on every single piece. I've actually been with a few of the different vendors who carry this, and they've showed me the internals of it and how beefy it is and what it does. It's a great product. And here's the Chelsea, and the Chelsea's going to have an O-ring that sits in the center, right? And then you've got the Muncie that's going to be stamped steel with the inner rubber. So this is part of the Bezeris. This is just a drawing to show where it's going to kind of sit, some of the depth of it. One thing that I will mention is that the Endurant XD just does sit a little bit lower than the Ultra Shift did. It hasn't been an issue even for some of our logging guys, but it's still something worth mentioning. I don't think there's any loggers that are really going to be buying that from this area, but just at least so people are aware, if they do have maybe a certain design or a certain build they're trying to do with it, it does sit a little bit lower. Here's another CAD drawing too, showing more of the PTO opening and some of the sizes on here. I'm going to skip over some of this stuff. This is just kind of dealer codes if dealers were to be speccing and what they'd be looking for switches. One thing I will mention from this slide for any customers on is, when you're speccing your truck, make sure you're getting the J1939 PTO controlled switch in there. I mean, all the salesmen they have at Kenworth Northeast are very experienced and they know this, but it's just something. I mean, even outside of that organization, it's just something you're going to want to make sure is in your spec. If it's not J1939 control, it's extremely expensive to add afterwards. And it's so much better to have it communicating right through that. It's just, if you're ever looking over your spec, just make sure that you're seeing that and it's exactly what you want. You ask all the questions on that. It's just different calibrations, what can be added after. It doesn't really apply to what we're doing today. One thing I will talk about here is mobile transmission PTO. This is still in the RFM, which is what I am, regional field manager. And this is available for us to be able to put on. It's just not available for full launch yet. What mobile transmission PTO does is it allows you to engage any gear while stationary. And we now have it that you don't have to just launch in that higher gear. You can actually upshift through the gears up to 9th gear as you're moving with PTO on. The reason that there's a hold on putting this out there and why we have this and why it's kind of a bigger deal is that we don't have a live PTO, right? So when the clutch actuates, excuse me, it actually stops the PTO because we stop spinning. So this allows it to momentarily start and stop and then continue to go. Same if you were to have a situation, I go back to plow trucks to kind of explain that. Not having a live PTO, you stop at the light, you're not going to have PTO functionality. We do have something that we've released for that as well outside of mobile transmission PTO, right? Mobile transmission PTO is going to allow you to do spreading work and other stuff like that. Another feature we have is if you do stop at a light and you want to maintain having PTO functionality, we do have an option where it's going to have like a 1 to 1.5 second delay where it's going to automatically shift the transmission to neutral, stop the PTO, and then restart it once it's in neutral. And when you go to take off again, you're going to have a second and a half delay of no PTO as it basically shifts back to drive and allows you to take off, starting and stopping the PTO again. So if anyone's ever in need of that, it's very slim amount of applications that need that. If anyone's ever in need of that, that is something that's optional. We just would not be doing that on a plow truck because that still limits you to ninth gear. So just as a caveat for that. So for not having a live PTO, if you're to be doing something like a plow truck, you'd be looking at doing a Repto or Fepto, which a lot of municipalities are already doing at this point anyway. Fepto and Repto has been a lot more reliable, and people tend to sway that way. It's been becoming a lot more common. Split shaft PTOs, and many of you guys are doing that, but we are approved for that as of the end of 2024. High railer applications, again, that's a very small segment that is available. That's available towards the end of 2024 as well. Everything must be done from inside the cab. We don't have any remote stations yet or joystick type applications where you can be completely outside of the truck. So this gets into some of the PTO install guides. If you guys ever wind up in a situation where you guys receive a truck, it goes to an upfitter and they're unsure, or they're trying to put an aftermarket switch in there when you have a J1939 controlled switch in there, get a hold of me, get a hold of your salesman. I can walk them through that. We want to make sure these are hooked up right. This is nothing new, but it seems that some of the body companies are struggling with making sure this is hooked up in a proper fashion, which, again, there's not much to it, but I've seen a few of that. So just kind of keep your eyes on it if you're going to a bodybuilder that seems to be unfamiliar. So warranty specs, availability. So as you see here, we have just a few segments listed out and what the warranty would look like. For line R, would be 5 years, 750. We go down to a 3-year, 300. That's going to be like your dump truck, right? So you'll see the applications below. If you guys have any questions on your specific application, you can definitely reach out to your salesman. So this gets into the different models here, and this is going to show the XD regular having the 3 reverse speeds. We're going to have an XD Pro with 6 reverse speeds, max horsepower. And then we get into the transmission weights. So we have 808 versus 813. If anyone remembers from earlier on, I said the transmissions are exactly the same, and the only difference is the clutch. Your high thermal clutch is going to have 5 more pounds to it, hence the weight difference. Next line, you'll see max GCW. Again, the TX18 is not unlimited. That is limited. Again, that's due to the horsepower and torque ratings of the engine. And then we get into the 8-bolt and 3 PTOs. At the bottom of this screen is something that I find very interesting, and I think is extremely helpful for people to kind of understand the difference between ultra shift and this outside of the clutch and the way it actuates the clutch. Is that this is a purposely built automated transmission, as I mentioned from the beginning. With that being said, I want you to look at the ratios, and you'll see 20% for first gear, 19% for second, 19 for third, 20, 19, 19, 20. What that is that's even steps between gearing. So you're no longer going up a hill and finding, hey, this gear is not doing it for me. Every time I crest right here, I'm stuck in this gear at this shift point with this RPM, and I'm just stalled out. Now you got even rungs of a ladder. You're not taking a giant step and a tiny step. You're taking the same step every single time. So you have all that power on demand, ready to go, same amount of distance between. It is ready to party at all times. Having the extra gear range, if you're coming out of an Allison with a 6-speed and you're trying to climb a hill, well, now you got the extra gear range. And if you're asking me, Adam, why do I need more than 6 speeds? Why would I want 18? Well, here's the thing. You're probably going to start in about 4th or 5th gear when you go to start out, and you're going to skip 2 to 3 gears at a time. But when you need it and you're trying to climb that hill, you got all the gear range up top. With that being said, with the 20, 19, 19, 20, and these even steps between gearing, it's going to feel like your pickup truck. When you go to take off, this is going to feel like your pickup truck. It's going to be smooth. It's going to have power at all times, and you're not going to feel every 18 speed. It's going to skip up to two to 3 at a time, and you're just going to be sailing right along. It is very smooth. I highly encourage everyone on this call to really get a hold of your salesman. They have stock of these. They have availability for you to drive them. I highly suggest you drive it. Every person that I've talked to about this, I could spend 30, 40 minutes talking about this new transmission. Everyone's excited. They get behind the wheel, they take it, and their socks are off. I mean, they are blown away by it. but my speech, my everything does not do enough to explain what this transmission is capable of and how it feels. It is extremely smooth. If anyone was ever holding off about staying with manuals and were afraid to go with automated, now is the time, right? This transmission is amazing. It does predictive shifting, and the even steps between gearing really shows as in the power of it and what it's capable of doing. In teleconnect remote diagnostics, this is something that we're still working towards. This is something that we had to work out with the OEMs on how to get this up into the interwebs so that we don't have, 3, 4, 5 different IMEI numbers on the truck pumping out a bunch of information. We tried to find a way to be able to tie in with someone else. And we finalized a lot of that towards the end of last year, and we should be implementing it towards later this year. This is going to give you fault code action plans, fault code severity identification, allow for a watch list, vehicle history, so on and so forth, right? So it's going to do a really great job being able to monitor your fault codes as you're moving. So gear logic, this gets into some of the stuff that's standard on the truck and some of the stuff that kind of explains the AI technology and how it goes. So hill start aid is really great. That's just like some of the cars that they have out now. It's going to hold it for 3 seconds. So if you're on a grade, it's going to hold the truck 3 seconds. And as soon as once you let off, it's going to release the brakes as soon as you hit the throttle. Or if you wait 3 seconds, it'll auto launch on its own. So I actually took one of the demo trucks that we had. It was an Ohio spec. It's tri-axle with 2 pushers, right? It's a weird Ohio spec. And I had that up in the hills of Pennsylvania with everyone looking at it. It's kind of funny with this weird spec dump truck. We had it loaded 68,000 pounds. And out there, they have quick, fast, steep hills. And took it out on the hills. I had a bunch of drivers that, have only drove. Actually, this one driver had only ever driven manual. He hated anything automated. He was quite upset that his boss made him do it, but he was the last guy there. We took it out, and we brought it up to a hill, and I had him stop. And we stopped on probably about a 20% grade. And we stopped, and I had him let off the brake. And I said, it's going to auto launch. You don't touch anything. Well, he was nervous, and we're in a pretty big grade. It's not something that's pleasurable. There's been some accidents he had told me about on that hill. So he lets off the brake, hovering over it. 1, 2, 3, and the truck takes off beautifully, all on its own. Does nothing. I tell him as it's going on its own, hit the upshift button. He's hesitant. Well, finally hits it, upshift. Smooth as butter. Up to the next gear, takes off on its own. So we go up, we turn around. I tell him, let's stop in the middle of the hill again. We stop. We do the same thing in reverse. He's hovering over the brake. After 3 seconds, takes off on its own. I tell him upshift. We go from R2 to R3. Takes the R3 shift, no problem, keeps on trucking. Never touches the throttle. And that goes a lot to say for what the truck is capable of. And we'll get to some of that stuff here in a second of what makes it able to do that. So auto neutral, that's going to swap to neutral when the parking brake is set. It will do it automatically. Also, if the driver makes a mistake, leaves it in drive and hits the park brake, happy day, goes to neutral. Engine overprotection, so that's going to be any kind of overspeed that you have. That's going to help protect the engine. Engine enhanced braking, so it's going to downshift the transmission to help slow the truck on long, steep descents and increase pad life. Allison 4500 series, anything under 30 miles per hour, it's not holding you back anymore, right? So with this product, you could do the exact same thing I was talking about, where you start off, stopped on a hill, let it take off on its own, go to the top of the hill, let it go back down. If you never touch the brake or the throttle, it'll hold you at that speed all the way down that hill. The transmission is going to stay in that gear. It's going to hold you back. If anything, it'll downshift and hold you back. It does not let you go any faster. So that's something the Allison can't do under 30 miles per hour. That's something that we can do under 30. The other thing people might not be aware of is low mode with an automated transmission. Low mode isn't like your pickup truck, how you're going to put it in low so you can climb a big hill. Low mode is going to allow you to go into a mode where it's going to hold you back. It's going to take you to the highest point of the RPM, and it's going to drop you down to the lowest, and it's going to hold you back the whole time. Low mode is activated by holding downshift for 5 seconds. That is available on the Ultra Shift Plus, and it's also available on this. That gives you extra stopping power on top of what we already have, the enhanced engine braking. Load-based shifting. So that's part of the AI, right? That's going to look at the grade. It's going to look at the vehicle weight, engine torque, and throttle position. It's also going to learn what the driver is doing. So every key cycle is going to learn the driver's habits, how the driver likes to drive, and it's going to tailor its shift calibrations to that. Not every shift and every time it's going to be the same. It's going to tailor itself to how the driver is driving, to the condition, to the load, to the grades, right? So every time it's going to be doing its own unique calculations based on all these different measurables. That's the AI portion. So urge to move. That's going to be just like your pickup truck. You let off the brake and it's going to say, hey, here we go, all on its own, even on grades like we just talked. Predictive shifting, that uses the look ahead technology to execute shift decisions to improve fuel economy and driver comfort. This is part of the AI I was talking about. The ultra shift has an issue. Anyone down here that's drove the ultra shift before, here's a perfect example, and I'm sure you can understand this. You go up a hill, you're coming down the hill, you're in the valley of the hill, and there's another hill right after that. It'll upshift on you when you get to that valley of that hill, right? Who wants to upshift and you have another hill coming? Well, the ultra shift doesn't know. This does. This will downshift as you get to the bottom of that hill, ready to climb the next hill, right? It's very impressive. I've tested it multiple times. I've tried to get this transmission to script because I wanted to find a fault in it so we could fix it. We never found a fault in it. I have many miles in this with customers, loaded all over the place, and we could not get it to hiccup. It is extremely smart. All the drivers I've taken out of there that have driven Allison Ultra Shift manual, every single time they're telling me, oh my gosh, this is exactly the gear I'd be in. This is exactly the time I would shift. That's exactly where I would upshift. It blows them away that it does exactly what a experienced, highly capable manual driver would do, and it does it with precision. So creep mode, that is exactly how it sounds. You can set that. You can upshift to a certain gear, and you're going to let off the throttle, and it's going to basically idle around at that speed. Great for yards. You have a 5 mile per hour yard, and you just want to idle around in there. If you're going too fast, you can downshift the gear. If you want to go a little faster, you can upshift the gear. Neutral coast mode, that is turned off on majority of Kenworth's product. Again, that's OEM driven. That's how they do their EPA testing. So certain models might have neutral coast mode where it's going to be enacted. It is not something that we control. Well, it is something that we are partaking, but it's not something that we have control over, that we have dictated, right? That's through the OEM. And then smart gear selection, that's going to go towards the also part of the AI and the shift decisions, right? So that's going to be the appropriate starting gear. With this transmission, we don't pick what default start gear we want. We pick the maximum default start gear. And this does it based upon weight, based upon grade, based upon engine torque, throttle position, right? It's going to skip shift when appropriate, up to 2 to 3 gears like we talked about. Very smart, very intuitive. This transmission goes from an ultra shift that basically checks like 4 boxes saying, hey, throttle was this, RPM is that, grade is this. And the weight, I feel like I'm talking is that time to shift, right? It doesn't use any of these other calculations, doesn't use any look ahead technology, very archaic way of doing it. Not that it was wrong, it's just this is so much better, right? This is a totally different mousetrap. So Endurant XD versus Endurant XD Pro. This is another side-by-side, kind of like the other one. Pay attention to the oil capacity that we have here, 25.4 pints, right? 12 liter. That's going to come in handy here soon. You see some more of the interval here for the on-highway lube interval and the vocational lube interval, and then the maintenance-free clutch. So anyone that came from the ultra shift and had to grease that clutch and had issues with improper compounds being used, right? Or maybe missing a few, or maybe you guys are hitting it at the lube tube and it never really got to the actual Zerk fitting and you had some issues there. That's all gone. And we've had this maintenance-free clutch out since 2017. It is something that's proven, works, no issues there. Oh, we ran into a problem. Bear with me. Okay, so availability we don't need. This is a very good slide. This is something that we all should pay attention to here. So when it comes out of the Cummins engine, right? If you're not buying a PACCAR powertrain and you want to go with the Cummins option, you'd be looking at either doing the X15 efficiency series, the X15 productivity series, or the X15 performance series. Okay. Let's note here on the X15 efficiency series. We'll look at the XD Pro. Off-highway and performance calibrations are not available with 1700 RPM governed speed. So due to the fact that those shift calibrations require a higher RPM to be used, they will not be functional during that. So if you have an efficiency series, you will be limited to the standard or tanker shift calibrations. Okay. The productivity series allows you to have all of the options, and the performance series allows you to have all the options. I don't know about the caveat in the note here in the bottom right corner, the off-highway calibration not available. I have yet to confirm that's legitimate moving forward, but I know in the past we've had that. So
Hey,
I'm going to say
Adam.
that's the error in our slide. Yes.
I'm not seeing a slide right now.
Hang on. One more time. Yeah, back up here, make sure my Zoom is still showing. Yeah, that's fine. Kicked me out of share. Let's see here.
Technology at its best.
Yeah.
There we go.
All right, let's get this back to presentation mode. I'm going to skip through again. And here we are. So now that you guys can see the slide, probably a little more helpful. Efficiency series, productivity series, performance series. Okay. In the center, it's going to say what it's recommended for. I think we all kind of know what we prefer. Your salesman's definitely going to be able to help, guide you guys for what you're looking for. Just be aware of the efficiency series. Now it's going to limit you on the options there for the different performance goals. So we're going to do some quick product comparisons. We're going to look at the iShift DM drive, Detroit DT12 vocational, and the Allison 4547 series, where I'm really going to pay attention to, guys. So this, we're going to compare us to us. You're going to see the Ultra Shift Plus here. I'm going to just skip through some of the keynotes here real quick. And the 225 pounds lighter, as we had mentioned, faster and smoother shifting, fewer components versus the AMT. We're going to, have that being the external wiring that we had on the Ultra Shift Plus, which, again, being in this climate, but we have corrosion, we have everything else that you can never stop. So you have less corrosion, you have less wires to be able to get caught on anything, get snagged, get broken. We have helical gearing, aluminum housing, precision lubrication. That's going to be that bottom sump pump that puts the lubrication exactly where it needs to be, so we don't have to go through the bath of lube and have a possible low lube burnup. Low speed maneuverability, that's going to be all part of that clutch, right? We've got the new diaphragm spring clutch. We've got next generation controls, pneumatic actuation on top of going from a ceramic to an organic material. So encapsulated electronics, all up on the TCM, oil pressure monitoring, oil temperature monitoring. And then we've got up to 2% better fuel economy, less lube required, and longer vocational maintenance interval. And then more PTO functionality. So Volvo versus us. You're going to have more forward gear for a smoother drive, higher max GCW, small even steps throughout the gear range, standard low mode, hill start, assist, and manual mode. So we have more features. We've got a broad PTO compatibility, right? We don't just limit you. So lower cost of ownership, 1/3 less lube required, broad serviceability and parts availability. You're not just stuck with one OEM for fixing. Better peace of mind, longer warranty with no hours and service limitations. Serviceable at dealerships, independent, and Cummins distributors. More PTO functionality. So Detroit on highway, you're gonna have more forward gears, higher max GCW, better overall ratio. So that overall ratio is gonna be that 20.5 to 1. And what that really, really breaks down to is that even spacing between gearing, right? Lower cost of ownership, longer lube interval, no expensive twin plate clutch needed. And then service and availability, serviceable at dealerships, independents, and Cummins distributors. Available at most OEMs, and more PTO functionality. Vocational is very similar, but we are purposely built for severe service, right? We're not just taking our 12-speed and trying to make it more robust to be able to fit in there, right? This is actually purposely built for severe service. It has a higher max GCW. More axle options, improved down speeding, no adaptive gear needed, PTO, lower cost spur gear for PTO drive, and more PTO functionality. Small, even steps. So you're going to have that again for the gearing. You're going to have less RPM loss during shifting and more capable skip shifting, right? So we can skip up to 2 to 3 gears at a time, but we also have those gears in between 20 and 19%. Extreme duty clutch. High thermal capacity for increased maneuvering time. No expensive twin plate clutch needed. So Alice, this is going to be the meat and potatoes here. So And we'll go through the list. We had already talked about the 30 miles per hour and under and how we're going to hold back better. But you've got product cost savings. So we're lower acquisition cost, and we have limited cooler use, right? So we're not required to put you into that unless you're over 110. Fuel economy, higher mechanical efficiency, integrated powertrain features, lower engine cruise speeds, right? We don't have all that torque converter stuff. We don't have all the fluid you need for that. That's going to get into the reduced maintenance. 100,000 miles longer lube change interval, and we're 36 to 39 fewer pints of transmissions over Ken. So if you look on their list, they're going to be 150,000 for their lube interval change. And then you have to do a filter swap at 75,000 miles, right? On highway, we're 500,000, vocational, we're 250,000. Performance, we're a better overall ratio, as we've spoken about it a few times. 170 to 430 pounds lighter. So anyone who's weight sensitive, that's huge. No reduced performance at 1850. So we're not limited to the 1850. We can go higher than that. And then higher max engine torque, that's 2050. And then high speed reverses. So we have up to 6 reverse speeds on the X3 Pro. You don't have to do, if you're in an application where you need high speed reverse. I know high rail is a big one for that, right? You have to run an AT1202 auxiliary transmission to be able to have high speed reverses. We don't need any of that. And if you're just a dump truck guy who's looking to go a little bit faster, you've got a mile, you got to back down. That high speed reverse comes in handy. This just goes to show the Ultra Shift Plus old models and what they would kind of transfer over to if you were curious. So if you wanted to take, hey, I used to run an EA3, right? What should I be doing? You kind of get a sense of that, right? If I had an MHP are really kind of the ones you're like, well, where do I need to be? If you're ever in that situation, you had a 13 speed ultra shift and you're kind of like, well, I don't know if I need a pro. I'm not really off highway. I will tell you that 9 out of 10 of these are being spec'd as a pro. Reason being, from what we're being told from engineering and everyone else, is that the pro can get upwards of 20 to 30% more clutch actuations. Anyone who's kind of like inner city or maybe some traffic, this or that, or longer longevity, are siding more towards going with a pro. Again, that's optional how you want to do it. We've never had an Endurant product in general have a clutch wear out. Um, I mean, there's other mechanical issues that can happen to a clutch over, its lifetime of, 5, 6 years, and it's well past its warrantable life. It is a wearable item, but wear out isn't really one that we've ever seen. But it is still, it's still nice to know you have a high thermal clutch. It's going to be a little bit more robust. So a lot of people can kind of go in that route. Not that it's right or wrong, just kind of what we've been seeing for trends. Then there's some additional resources, and as I said, we do have customer testimonials. We have a lot of these out there. So if anyone's ever got a question or there's a certain segment of business, I'm sure Kenworth Northeast has a list of customers. They have many, many, many people running this. If not, if you're in kind of more of a unique application, I'm sure that I've got customers, probably throughout the local area, maybe not a little further out, that are running this transmission that you could speak with as well. So if you're ever in need of that, or if you want to talk to someone about it, let your salesperson know or myself. Another one you could go to that I highly recommend is eatoncummins.com, and you'll go to the product section. You go to the transmission section, select the transmission you're interested in, whether it's the 12-speed, the XD, or the XD Pro. And there's resource tabs in there. There's driver instruction tabs in there. There's lots of information. We also have a transmission selector that you can find at selector.eatoncummins.com. It does a great job of typing in what you're looking for, your different, specifications of what you need, your application. It's going to spit that out to you. One thing that I would like to mention is I kind of skipped over this is with the different performance goals, you get to have two. So when you go to build your truck, if you're doing a dump truck, for example, you'd probably want to have your primary, performance goal be performance. Your secondary, you'd want to set the off-road. And say you're going down the highway and your pit's coming up and you're working this construction site and you're going to get off into some loose mud. You could be going down the highway. You could hold upshift for 3 seconds, and it's going to put you into your calibration 2 mode. It'll show C2 next to the gear display. You can then pull off, go into the pit, and you're going to be in off-road mode, right? And you can swap at any point, any speed. You can go back and forth between the two of them. If you sometimes do standard loads, once in a while, you pull an on-baffled tanker, right? You could have tanker as your secondary and performance as your primary. So there's different options when that would be, something you might want to use. The other thing that we have is called paver mode. So anyone's doing a dump truck, they're doing any kind of asphalt work. So you have the asphalt machine that's pushing you, and you get to a certain point that you need to have some throttle put in there to really keep it moving. So you would normally have to hit the service brake to go from neutral to drive. With this transmission, you can enable service mode within Service Ranger. The dealer or myself will be able to do that, or you can do it when you build it. And you would turn on paver mode. And paver mode allows you to go from neutral to drive without hitting the service brake. Now, for that feature to come enacted, you have to press the throttle within 3 seconds of going from neutral to drive. It'll enact paver mode, and then paver mode will stay on until the key cycles off. If it does not sense that you have hit the throttle after being in paver mode for 5 seconds after enabled, it'll go back to neutral. This will turn off auto launch. So the truck won't take off on its own. So there's no need for you to have to hit the brake. You can just go from neutral to drive and then hit the throttle when need be. And then you can go from drive to neutral without touching the service brake ever. So you're not going to put a big old hump in the asphalt. You'll be able to keep on trucking. Really nice feature.